In today's Spanish monarchy, two queens share the spotlight while also maintaining a relationship marked by tensions and divergences. Queen Sofia, the emeritus queen, ceased to be the official sovereign after her husband, King Juan Carlos I, abdicated in 2014. On the other hand, Queen Letizia, the wife of the current King Felipe VI, holds the title of Queen Consort. Both are highly relevant public figures, but their vastly different personalities and lifestyles have led to visible conflicts over the years. Sophia, born a princess of Greece, arrived in Spain to become the queen the people so desperately needed. Married to Juan Carlos I, she played a crucial role in restoring the monarchy after Franco's regime. Always devoted, discreet, and impeccable in her duties, she endured a marriage privately marked by infidelities and emotional distance. While the king's cheating scandals became public, she never wavered. With silent strength, she upheld her dignity, protecting the royal family's image and becoming a symbol of resilience and stability for the entire nation. She remains deeply loved by the Spanish people. On the other hand, Queen Letizia represents a new era for the Spanish monarchy. A former journalist, commoner, and divorcee, she broke tradition by marrying Felipe VI in 2004. Her modern and progressive style, combined with a strong personality and bold vision, often clashes with Queen Sophia's conservative approach, especially regarding family matters. This has made her a controversial figure, though she is admired by those who advocate for a more modern monarchy. The differences between the two became evident on several public occasions. One of the most talked about moments occurred in 2018 during the Easter Mass in Palma de Mallorca. Cameras captured an awkward scene. Sofia attempted to pose for a photo with her granddaughters, while Letizia, seemingly displeased, stepped in, doing everything possible to ruin the moment between the grandmother and her granddaughters. According to reports, the outspoken former king, Juan Carlos I, directly told his son, "Control your wife." The episode sparked significant media attention. The news spread rapidly across the internet, and all of Spain, and even parts of the world, discussed the confrontation between the two queens. Outside the church, the dispute continued. Sofia insisted on taking a picture with her granddaughters, while Letizia kept interrupting. Finally, the emeritus queen kissed her granddaughter Leonor and walked away. However, Letizia appeared to immediately approach the child and wipe the spot where her grandmother had kissed her. Following the incident, Letizia was forced to issue a public apology. In an appearance with her husband, mother-in-law, and daughters, she opened the car door for Sofia, who walked behind with the princesses. This time, the girls appeared very affectionate with their grandmother, while Letizia projected a more docile, cheerful, and smiling image. And so, the Spanish monarchy continues to evolve. But today, let's travel back in time, exactly 137 years, to the birth year of the protagonist of this story. In an era with different media, different kings, queens, and princesses, everything was different, except for one element that always persists: drama, scandals, and tragedies. No matter the time period, they always make their presence felt, and her story was no exception. Get ready to discover the tragic life of Victoria Eugenie, Spain's forgotten queen. Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg was born on October 24, 1887, in the imposing Balmoral Castle in Scotland. She was the daughter of Prince Henry of Battenberg and Princess Beatrice, the youngest daughter of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. Her arrival into the world was marked by family drama. Her mother, Beatrice, was only allowed to marry with the reluctant approval of Queen Victoria, who did not want to lose her most loyal daughter. Ultimately, Beatrice's love for Henry prevailed, but under a strict condition. Beatrice had to remain by her mother's side as a lady-in-waiting and personal secretary. Victoria Eugenie, or Anna, as she was affectionately called, grew up under the strict supervision of her grandmother. Her name, Victoria, honored the queen. Eugenie paid tribute to her godmother, Empress Eugenie de Montijo, and Julia honored her paternal grandmother. Finally, Ina was a surname chosen by her parents. She spent her early years between Windsor Castle, Balmoral, and Osborne, always under the imposing presence of Queen Victoria. From a young age, her life was marked by drama. At the age of 6, Ina suffered a severe fall from a pony, resulting in a serious concussion. Doctors feared the worst. She showed signs of brain hemorrhage and symptoms of intracranial hypertension, putting the family on high alert. Her aunt, Princess Victoria, wrote with concern, "It is so serious that she cannot even open her eyes." Ina survived, but this scare left a lasting impact on her childhood. The drama in her life did not end there. Just a few years later, in 1896, her father, Prince Henry, tragically died of fever during an expedition to Africa, where he was suppressing a revolt. At just 9 years old, Ina experienced the loss of a father she barely had time to know. The impact of this tragedy was profound. However, in 1905, during a glamorous ball at Buckingham Palace hosted by her uncle, King Edward VII, Princess Victoria Eugenie crossed paths with the charismatic Alfonso XIII of Spain. Victoria Eugenie was only 17 years old. Alfonso had attended the event with the intention of meeting another princess, Patricia of Connaught, Eugenie's cousin. However, unexpectedly, he was captivated by Ina. Regarding him, Eugenie later commented, "I did not find him handsome, but I felt a strong attraction. He was very charming, energetic, expressive, and delightful." At the end of the ball, Alfonso told her, "I hope you won't forget me." Maintaining her composure, she replied, "It is not easy to forget the visit of a king." Thus began their story, seemingly a fairy tale in which a king finally found his princess. No one imagined that Victoria Eugenie would become the future Queen of Spain. But the king was determined to woo his princess. At the time, all young princesses shared a common pastime, collecting postcards. The king asked if she liked them, and she responded affirmatively. Over the next 8 months, Victoria Eugenie received a postcard from Alfonso XIII every week. Earlier that year, Alfonso XIII, about to turn 19, traveled across Europe visiting the most distinguished royal houses in search of a princess to marry. All of Spain was aware of his quest and eagerly anticipated the announcement of the new Spanish queen. The newspaper ABC organized a poll that was a resounding success. For just 5 cents, readers could take the newspaper home and participate in a vote that took up an entire page, displaying pictures of the eligible princesses at the time, along with a coupon to fill out with their favorite choice. Among the candidates was Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg, and to the surprise of many, she was the most voted choice by the Spanish people, winning by nearly 5,000 votes over the other contenders. It is uncertain whether Alfonso XIII was aware of this poll and the opinion of his people, but what is certain is that after meeting her, he desired nothing more than to win her heart, defying the strong opposition from the government and his mother to a possible marriage with Victoria Eugenie. Queen Maria Cristina, Alfonso XIII's mother, did not look favorably upon the union, particularly due to the modest background of the bride. While she was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria, she also belonged to the Battenberg family, and her paternal grandmother, Countess Julia von Hauke, was the daughter of a Polish military officer of lower nobility. This meant that Victoria Eugenie held only the title of Highness in the United Kingdom and Serene Highness in the Grand Duchy of Hesse-Darmstadt. For Queen Maria Cristina, this was simply unacceptable. The government's primary objections were religious. The young princess was Anglican, whereas Spain was, and still remains, deeply Catholic. The idea of a non-Catholic queen was widely rejected. However, Alfonso XIII was not deterred. 7 months after their first meeting at the ball, he arranged a second meeting with Victoria Eugenie in Biarritz, a coastal town in southern France popular among royalty at the time. The two had not seen each other in person since the ball, though they had maintained frequent correspondence. Upon arriving at the residence where the princess was staying, Alfonso XIII wasted no time in informing Victoria, Eugenie's mother, Princess Beatrice, of his intention to ask for her daughter's hand in marriage. He then sent a telegram to his own mother, confirming that he had proposed. To marry Alfonso XIII, Victoria Eugenie had to undergo a significant change. She had to convert to Catholicism, leaving behind her Anglican traditions. This decision was painful for her, but she understood that marrying a Spanish king required this sacrifice. Thus, on March 7, 1906, Victoria Eugenie converted to Catholicism, and 2 days later, the Spanish royal house officially announced their engagement. On May 31, 1906, Madrid was in celebration. The sun shone brightly for a grand occasion, the wedding of King Alfonso XIII. The ceremony took place at the Church of San Geronimo. Although the atmosphere was festive, there were rumors of possible attacks, but most people were unaware of these threats. However, both the government and Alfonso XIII himself were concerned. Victoria Eugenie arrived slightly late, making Alfonso nervous. Ultimately, the ceremony proceeded without issues, and the newlyweds departed for the royal palace of Madrid in a carriage. For security reasons, Alfonso had forbidden the throwing of flowers along the route. However, as they reached at the end of Calle Mayor, some people began tossing flowers. At that moment, the anarchist Mateo Moral, from the 4th floor of a building, threw a bouquet of flowers concealing a bomb. The explosion occurred near the carriage, causing total panic. Later, Victoria Eugenie recalled that upon opening the carriage door to check if they were unharmed, Alfonso said, "We are unscathed. Please tend to the wounded." As she stepped out, she was horrified to see soldiers, civilians, and horses torn apart, surrounded by a true bloodbath. Her dress was stained with the blood of the soldiers who had died near the carriage. The attack left 23 dead and dozens injured. Despite the tragedy, Victoria Eugenie maintained her composure. Though Alfonso canceled the royal banquet, he chose to proceed with the reception at the royal palace. After the wedding, the couple embarked on their honeymoon, and 4 months later, Victoria Eugenie was pregnant. On May 10, 1907, their firstborn, Alfonso, was born, bringing great joy to the royal family. Victoria Eugenie was a woman ahead of her time. Her modern and independent attitude broke with the standards of royalty in that era. She did not hesitate to express her tastes in public, something considered bold for a queen. For instance, she was not afraid to be seen smoking in public, which scandalized many. At times, she even wore trousers, a garment deemed inappropriate for women of the time, especially in aristocratic circles. Moreover, Victoria Eugenie wished to breastfeed her children, an unusual practice among Spanish nobility, where wet nurses typically took on this duty. However, she was not allowed to do so with her firstborn, facing the rigid traditions of the time. The joy over the birth of the little heir soon turned into concern. When the prince was still a baby, he underwent a small surgery, but the doctors noticed that the bleeding did not stop. They then discovered that the child suffered from hemophilia, a hereditary disease that had evidently been transmitted by his mother, Victoria Eugenie. She was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria, a carrier of the hemophilia gene, which had been passed on to several of her descendants. This diagnosis caused a deep fracture in the marriage of Alfonso XIII and Victoria Eugenie. The king, deeply disappointed and furious, openly blamed his wife for bringing this affliction to the Spanish royal family. Alfonso, who was once madly in love with her, declared that he would never forgive her. Since then, the relationship between the two began to deteriorate. Despite this serious crisis, the marriage had 7 more children, of whom 6 reached adulthood. However, each birth was surrounded by fear, as there was a risk that hemophilia would manifest in the children. In addition to the firstborn, the youngest son, Gonzalo, was also born with this disease. Curiously, the couple's 2 daughters, Beatriz and Maria, were not carriers of the gene. The second son, Jaime, was born healthy but became deaf after corrective surgery that damaged his auditory bones, also leaving him with speech problems. Among the male children, only the third, Juan, was born completely healthy. Later, he would become the grandfather of the current King of Spain, Felipe VI. After the birth of their last child, the marriage between Alfonso XIII and Victoria Eugenie completely broke down, and the distance between them became irreparable. 8 years after their wedding, the disdain towards his wife was evident. The Queen, who always maintained a dignified stance in public, had to endure the numerous infidelities of Alfonso XIII, known throughout the kingdom. Without any pretense, the king appeared publicly with several mistresses, and his behavior was widely known. Victoria Eugenie, still deeply in love with her husband, also had to face public criticism. Many blamed her for the king's infidelities, as if her behavior was the cause of Alfonso's betrayals. Despite everything, she tried to maintain her composure. Although many perceived her as a cold and distant woman, her intention was to project an impassive image in the face of her husband's love scandals. Her relationship with her mother-in-law, Queen Mother Maria Cristina, was not easy either. The two had very different personalities, and tensions rose during the First World War. While Maria Cristina sympathized with the German side, Victoria Eugenie, of English origin, supported her cousin, King George V. These differences, along with Alfonso's decision to invite his mother to live with them, further increased the conflicts. Maria Cristina, on many occasions, eclipsed her daughter-in-law, taking away her prominence as queen. A clear example of this was that when the king fell ill, the letters of concern sent by the people were addressed to the Queen Mother and not to Victoria Eugenie. Although she avoided getting involved in political matters, the Queen devoted herself entirely to her children and charitable activities. Despite the growing distance with Alfonso XIII and tensions at the court, her commitment to charitable works and her empathy towards the most needy helped her earn the respect of many. Among her greatest contributions was her work in the field of public health. During a time when tuberculosis was one of the main causes of death in Spain, she promoted the creation of institutions to treat the sick and launched campaigns to prevent the disease. She was key in founding the Spanish Red Cross and promoted the construction of dispensaries and sanatoriums aimed at caring for the poorest and wounded soldiers. Additionally, Victoria Eugenie played a fundamental role in the professionalization of nursing in Spain. She founded the Red Cross Nursing School, whose objective was to train qualified women to work in hospitals and emergency services. This effort helped to transform nursing into a recognized profession in the country, something almost non-existent at that time. Despite personal challenges and the difficulties of court life, the legacy of Victoria Eugenie in the social and medical fields left a lasting mark in Spain, establishing her as a figure of great impact in the country's history. Another area of great dedication for the Queen was the protection of motherhood and childhood. She founded maternity homes and shelters for single mothers and children in vulnerable situations. Additionally, she promoted vaccination campaigns and children's medical care. However, these efforts took place in a politically turbulent time. In 1921, the assassination of Prime Minister Eduardo Dado by an anarchist, along with the military defeat in Morocco, known as the Disaster of Annual, shook the popularity of Alfonso XIII. 2 years later, in 1923, the king supported the dictatorship of Primo de Rivera, which initially brought some stability, but ended in failure, leaving the country in a severe crisis. With the growth of the Republican movement and the defeat of the monarchy in the municipal elections of 1931, Alfonso XIII decided to abdicate. Without political or military support, he chose to leave Spain to avoid a civil war, which led to the proclamation of the Second Republic. That night, the king called his wife to inform her that it was all over. He told her he would leave the palace that very night, but assured her that he had nothing against her. He offered for her to stay with the children and get ready to leave later. Victoria Eugenie spent the night listening to the shouts and chaos of the revolution that was drawing closer and closer to the palace. In a later interview, she confessed that that night, alone in the palace with her children, she felt a deep fear. Around 5 in the morning, a friend of Alfonso XIII arrived hastily and asked to wake her up immediately. He warned her of the danger she faced and advised her to leave the palace immediately. Aware of the risk, especially after witnessing years ago the fall of the Russian Empire and the tragic fate of the imperial family, Victoria Eugenia quickly prepared. She took her children and left the palace, ending her 25 years as Queen of Spain. She went into exile, dividing her life between France and London. Although they never officially separated, Alfonso and Victoria Eugenie lived apart from then on, meeting only on rare occasions during family events. Their daughters moved to Rome with their father, while the sons studied in different European cities. The heir, Don Alfonso, Prince of Asturias, used to treat his hemophilia at a clinic in Switzerland. There he met Edelmira San Pedro, daughter of a wealthy Cuban landowner with whom he fell in love. When he decided to marry her in 1933, Alfonso XIII strongly opposed it. He warned him that if he wished to marry a commoner, he would have to renounce all his dynastic rights and the title of Prince of Asturias. Alfonso accepted the conditions and celebrated his wedding, which his father did not attend. However, Victoria Eugenie, always close to her son, was present. 3 years later, Edelmira and Alfonso separated. In 1934, Victoria Eugenie and Alfonso XIII reunited at a tragic moment, the funeral of their youngest son, Gonzalo, who died at 19 years old in a car accident in Switzerland. The car was driven by his sister Beatriz. In 1938, his older brother Alfonso also died, as he could not recover from the injuries caused by a car accident in Miami. In that same year, 1938, the Queen traveled to Rome to attend the baptism of her grandson, Juan Carlos, the future King Juan Carlos I of Spain. At that time, Alfonso XIII was already seriously ill. 3 years later, in 1941, the king died at 54 years old in the Grand Hotel of Rome, a victim of angina pectoris. He never returned to Spain, and his body was buried in the Spanish Church of Montserrat in Rome. After the death of Alfonso XIII, Victoria Eugenie settled permanently in Switzerland. She bought a house, the Villa La Fontaine, where she continued living in exile. From there, she remained active, working tirelessly for the restoration of the Spanish monarchy and defending the rights of her son Juan as the legitimate heir to the throne. Over the years, she received frequent visits from her children and grandchildren. One of the happiest moments was the marriage of her grandson, Juan Carlos, to Princess Sophia of Greece in May 1962, a rare instance of family celebration. The marriage had 3 children, 2 infantas and an heir, Felipe VI, the current King of Spain. Victoria Eugenie was invited to be the godmother at the baptism of little Felipe. The event would take place in Madrid. What would mark her first visit to Spain after 37 years of exile? Although she was worried and nervous about the idea of returning, she accepted with enthusiasm. In February of 1968, she landed in Madrid and, to her surprise, was received by a crowd of people, journalists and onlookers who were waiting for her. Upon getting off the plane, Victoria Eugenie was warmly welcomed by the Spanish people, which deeply moved her. The baptism was held at the Liria Palace, owned by the Duchess of Alba, Cayetana, who was also her goddaughter and invited her to stay there during her visit. The event was grand, with the attendance of the Spanish royal family and the head of state, General Franco. Victoria Eugenie felt immensely proud to be the godmother of her great-grandson. She also took the opportunity to visit the Red Cross, where she was received with the respect and affection that her legacy deserved. The Duchess of Alba organized an emotional surprise for her godmother, Victoria Eugenie, by opening the doors of the Liria Palace to the public. Anyone who wanted could come in, greet her, and talk to her. This gesture allowed the exiled queen to experience once again the affection of the Spanish people. Thousands of people gathered to see her, forming an endless line that stretched through the palace gardens. The exiled queen, with exceptional patience and kindness, spent 4 hours greeting and chatting with everyone, mostly anonymous and humble citizens. This event was the last public act she participated in while in Spain. The next day, she returned to her home in Switzerland. Shortly after her return, her health began to deteriorate. Finally, on April 15, 1969, she passed away at 81 years old. Victoria Eugenie's funeral was a solemn occasion. The royal houses of Europe sent flowers and messages of condolence, lamenting the death of the exiled queen who had outlived her husband, Alfonso XIII, by 28 years. She was buried in the Church of the Sacred Heart in Lausanne, the city where she had lived her final years.